Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair on the bridge of the UES Defiant, staring at the star chart displayed on the main screen. The coffee in his mug had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. Something felt wrong today, though. He could not explain what it was. The Defiant was humanity's newest warship, fresh out of the Earth shipyards just 6 months ago. Its hull gleamed with experimental armor that could adapt to different types of weapons. The engines used quantum fold, technology that most engineers still did not fully understand. Even Jake had to admit the ship was beyond anything humans had built before. A sharp beep from the communications console broke his thoughts. Communications Officer Danny Rodriguez looked up from his station with concern written across his face. "Captain, we're getting a distress signal. It's coming from the Kepler 442 system." Jake sat up straight in his chair. Kepler 442 was where the colony ship Meridian was supposed to be setting up humanity's 15th colony. 50,000 people were aboard that ship, including families with children who had dreamed of starting new lives among the stars. "Put it through, Danny." The bridge speakers crackled with static, then a panicked voice came through. The transmission was breaking up badly, but Jake could make out enough words to understand what was happening. "This is Captain Helen Parks of the colony ship Meridian. We are under attack by unknown alien vessels. Repeat, we are under attack. They appeared without warning and opened fire immediately. Our shields are failing. We have women and children aboard. Please, if anyone receives this message, tell Earth that we tried to—" The transmission cut off into silence. Jake felt his stomach drop. In all of human history, they had never encountered hostile alien life. There had been theories and preparations, but no one really believed it would happen so soon after humanity began expanding into space. Danny tried to re-establish contact with the Meridian. Rodriguez worked at his console for several minutes, adjusting frequencies and boosting signal strength. Finally, he shook his head. "Nothing, Captain. Complete radio silence from their position." Lieutenant, Commander Kate Sullivan, the ship's tactical officer, spoke up from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting some very faint energy readings from the Kepler 442 system. The signatures don't match any human technology I know about." Jake stood up and walked to the center of the bridge. Around him, his crew waited for orders. These were good people, trained and ready for whatever space might throw at them, but none of them had ever faced an actual alien threat before. Set course for Kepler 442, maximum speed. Battle stations. The Defiant's engines hummed with power as the ship changed direction. Chief Engineer Ben Walsh's voice came over the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, the quantum fold drives are ready for combat acceleration, but I have to warn you, we've never pushed these systems this hard in a real situation. The test runs went well, but this is different." "Understood, Ben. Give me everything you've got." Dr. Amy Foster, the ship's science officer, looked up from her scanner readings. "Captain, based on the energy signatures, Lieutenant Commander Sullivan detected whatever attacked the Meridian used plasma-based weapons. The power levels are far beyond anything we've seen before." Jake nodded grimly. The Defiant carried the latest human weapons technology, including experimental railguns and directed energy systems. But if the aliens had more advanced weapons, this could be a very short fight. The journey to Kepler 442 took 18 hours at maximum speed. During that time, Jake barely left the bridge. He studied everything they knew about the system, reviewed the Defiant's weapons and defense systems, and tried to prepare for whatever they might find. When they finally dropped out of hyperspace, at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, the sight that greeted them was worse than Jake had feared. "My God," whispered Sullivan from her tactical station. The main screen showed a massive debris field where the Meridian should have been. Pieces of the colony ship drifted in space, some still glowing from the heat of whatever weapons had destroyed them. There were no life signs, no escape pods, no survivors. 50,000 people. Gone. Jake clenched his fists as he stared at the wreckage. These had been innocent civilians, families seeking a better life. They had been defenseless against whatever had attacked them. "Captain," Rodriguez called out, "I'm picking up alien transmissions. The universal translator is working on them, but it's slow going." "What can you make out?" "Fragments mostly." references to inferior species and easy conquest. There's also something about expanding their territory. Dr. Foster was running detailed scans of the debris field. Captain, I'm analyzing the weapon signatures. Whatever hit the Meridian used coordinated attacks from multiple ships. I count at least 12 different plasma cannon signatures. 12 ships to destroy one defenseless colony vessel. Jake felt anger building in his chest. These aliens were not just hostile, they were ruthless. Captain, Sullivan's voice was sharp with alarm. Long-range sensors are detecting incoming ships, a lot of them. The tactical display lit up with red dots as the alien fleet approached. Jake counted the contacts as they appeared on screen. 10 ships, 20, 50. The numbers kept climbing. How many? He asked quietly. Sullivan's voice was barely above a whisper. Over 200 vessels, Captain. They're huge. Some of them are 10 times the size of the Defiant. Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were scared, and they had every right to be. The smart thing to do would be to run back to Earth as fast as possible and warn the government about this new threat. But running would mean leaving the Meridian's destruction unanswered. It would mean letting these aliens think that humans were easy prey, like the colony ship had been. Captain, Ben Walsh's voice came from the engine room. The quantum fold drives are running perfectly. We can be out of here and back to Earth in hours if we leave now. Jake stared at the debris field on the main screen. Somewhere in that wreckage were the remains of 50,000 people who had trusted humanity to protect them. They had died alone and afraid, with no one to help them. No, he said firmly. We're not running. The alien fleet was dropping out of hyperspace now, their massive ships appearing in flashes of twisted light. The largest vessel was easily a mile long, bristling with weapons and armor. It dwarfed the Defiant like a whale next to a minnow. Captain, they're trying to communicate with us, Rodriguez reported. Put them through. The main screen changed to show the bridge of the alien flagship. The creature that appeared was unlike anything humans had ever imagined. It stood on 2 legs like a human, but its skin was covered in scales that shifted color as Jake watched. Its eyes were large and yellow with no visible pupils. When it spoke, its voice was deep and threatening. Primitive vessel, you will surrender immediately or face the same fate as your colony ship. We are the Zeracon Empire, and we do not show mercy to inferior species. Jake stood up from his command chair and faced the screen. Around him, his crew waited to see what their captain would do. The smart choice was surrender. The safe choice was surrender. But Jake Morrison had not become a starship captain by making safe choices. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Defiant. You destroyed an unarmed civilian vessel carrying innocent people. I cannot allow that to go unanswered. The alien creature's scales shifted to a deeper red color. You dare to threaten us? Your pathetic ship is outnumbered, 200 to 1. You have no chance of victory. Jake smiled grimly. Maybe not, but before we discuss surrender, I'd like to see what your weapons can do. Could you demonstrate them on that asteroid over there? I want to know what I'm up against. The alien looked, confused by the request, but after a moment it laughed. The sound was like grinding metal. Very well, primitive. Watch and despair. The alien fleet turned their weapons on a nearby asteroid. Dozens of plasma beams struck the rocky surface, and in seconds the entire asteroid simply ceased to exist. Thank you for the demonstration, Jake said calmly. Now let me show you ours. He turned to his crew. Battle stations, all hands, prepare for combat. The bridge erupted into controlled activity as his officers prepared the Defiant for what would probably be the most important battle in human history. Fleet Commander Vexthul stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Wrath, watching the human vessel with growing amusement. His scales shifted from deep red to a lighter orange, the color of satisfaction among his people. The tiny ship looked so small compared to his massive fleet that he almost felt sorry for the creatures inside it. Almost. The Zeracon Empire had been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years. Vexthul himself had overseen the destruction of 17 different species during his long military career. Some had fought bravely, others had surrendered quickly, but all had fallen before the might of the Empire. This new species, these humans, would be no different. Intelligence Officer Kretos, what do your scans tell us about this vessel? Vexthul asked, without taking his eyes off the main screen. Kretos, a smaller Zericon with bright green scales, worked at his station for several moments before responding. Commander, the readings are strange. The ship appears to be roughly the size of one of our cruisers, but the energy signatures are inconsistent. Their power source seems to fluctuate, in ways I have never seen before. Vexthul's scales shifted slightly toward yellow, the color of mild interest. Fluctuations? What kind of fluctuations? It is difficult to explain, Commander. Sometimes the ship shows very high energy readings. Other times it almost disappears from our sensors entirely. Their technology is unlike anything in our databases. Sub-Commander. Talvex, Vexthul's second-in-command, stepped forward. His black scales marked him as a member of the Zericon warrior caste. Commander, perhaps this is some kind of scouting vessel. The humans might be testing our defenses before sending their main fleet. Vexthul considered this possibility. It would make sense for a primitive species to send scouts before committing to battle. But something about the human captain's behavior did not match that theory. The creature had seemed too calm, too confident for someone who was simply gathering information. How many ships does our intelligence suggest the humans possess? Vexthul asked. Kretos consulted his records. Based on our observation of their colony ship, Commander, we estimate they have a very small fleet, perhaps 20 or 30 vessels at most. Their technology appears to be several centuries behind our own. The fleet commander's scales brightened to a cheerful orange. 20 or 30 ships would pose no threat to the Empire's might. The Zericon had over 10,000 warships spread across their territory, with more being built every year. Even if every human ship was as large as this Defiant, they would be easily crushed. Their captain requested a demonstration of our weapons, Vexthul mused. How curious. Most species beg for mercy when they see our fleet. This human asked to see our power. Perhaps they are simply too primitive to understand the danger they face, suggested Talvex. Some species need to see destruction before they comprehend their situation. Vexthul nodded. That explanation made sense. The humans had probably never encountered a truly advanced civilization before. They might not understand what plasma weapons could do or how powerful Zericon shields were. The demonstration with the asteroid should have made things clear enough. Open a channel to the human vessel again, Vexthul ordered. The main screen flickered, showing the bridge of the human ship. The captain, Jake Morrison, stood in the center of what appeared to be a very primitive command center. The displays were flat and basic, nothing like the holographic systems the Zericon used. The crew members were all the same species, unlike Zericon ships which carried warriors from several conquered races. Human captain, Vexthul began, you have seen what our weapons can do. That asteroid was completely destroyed in seconds. Your ship, no matter how advanced you think it is, will suffer the same fate if you do not surrender immediately. The human captain smiled, which Vexthul found disturbing. Among the Zericon, showing teeth was a sign of aggression. Perhaps these humans were more warlike than they appeared. I appreciate the demonstration, Morrison replied. Very impressive. Your plasma weapons are quite powerful, but I notice they seem to work best against stationary targets. Vexthul's scales shifted toward purple, the color of confusion. What do you mean? Well, that asteroid couldn't move or defend itself. I'm curious how well your weapons work against a target that can fight back. The audacity of the statement made Vexthul's scales flash bright red. This primitive creature was actually suggesting that his ship could somehow avoid the Empire's weapons. It was insulting beyond belief. You think your tiny vessel can evade our plasma cannons? Vexthul's voice rose with anger. We have destroyed countless ships, many of them larger and more advanced than yours. I'm sure you have, Morrison agreed calmly. But I bet none of them had quantum-fold drives. Kretos looked up sharply from his station. Commander, quantum-fold technology is theoretical even for us. Our scientists have been trying to develop it for decades without success. Vexthul dismissed the claim with a wave of his clawed hand. The human is bluffing, trying to make us think they possess advanced technology. It is a common tactic among desperate species. But even as he spoke, Vexthul noticed something odd on his tactical display. The human ship's energy signature was fluctuating again, more dramatically than before. For a moment it almost seemed to disappear entirely, then reappeared in exactly the same position. "Weapons Officer Zektar, prepare the plasma cannons," Vexthul ordered. "Target the human vessel's engines. We will disable them and take the crew prisoner for interrogation." Zektar, a massive Zeracon with scarred yellow scales, began charging the flagship's primary weapons. "Plasma cannons charging, Commander. We will be ready to fire in 30 seconds. On the screen, the human captain turned to speak with his crew members. Vexthul could not hear what they were saying, but he noticed how calm they all appeared. Most species panicked when facing the full might of a Zeracon fleet. These humans acted as if they were simply having a normal conversation. "Commander," Krytos reported, "I am detecting some kind of energy buildup from the human vessel. Their power levels are increasing rapidly." Vexthul's scales shifted toward yellow again. "What kind of energy buildup?" "Unknown, Commander. The readings do not match any weapon system in our databases, but the power levels are significant." Before Vexthul could respond, the human captain spoke again from the main screen. "Fleet Commander, I want to thank you for agreeing to this demonstration. It will help me explain to Earth Command exactly what kind of threat your empire represents. But now I think it's time we showed you what human technology can really do." The communication channel closed, leaving Vexthul staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically at their stations as alarms began to sound. "Commander," Zektar called out, "the human ship is powering weapons, but these energy signatures, I have never seen anything like them." "All ships attack formation," Vexthul ordered. "Destroy that vessel before it can fire." 200 Zeracon warships began moving into position, their plasma cannons charging and particle beam weapons coming online. The human ship sat motionless in space, seemingly waiting for the attack. Vexthul felt confident again. No matter what tricks the humans might have, they were still outnumbered, 200 to 1. Even if their single ship was more advanced then, it appeared, the Empire's overwhelming numbers would crush them quickly. "Sir," Talvex reported, "all ships report ready to fire. The human vessel is completely surrounded." "Fire at will," Vexthul commanded. "Destroy them." The space around the Defiant lit up with hundreds of plasma beams and particle weapons. The concentrated firepower of the Zeracon fleet was enough to destroy a small moon, and it was all focused on one tiny human ship. But when the energy weapons reached the Defiant's position, something impossible happened. The beams passed right through the ship as if it was not there at all. The human vessel flickered like a ghost, seeming to exist and not exist at the same time. Then, suddenly, 3 of Vexthul's cruisers simply exploded. There was no warning, no visible weapon fire, nothing to indicate what had destroyed them. One moment they were firing at the human ship, the next moment they were expanding clouds of debris and plasma. Vexthul stared at his tactical display in complete shock. His scales had turned deep purple, the color of total disbelief. In 1,000 years of conquest, nothing like this had ever happened to a Zeracon fleet. What just happened?" he whispered. Krytos was frantically working at his sensors, trying to understand what had occurred. "Commander, I detected some kind of projectile weapons, but they were moving far too fast for our sensors to track properly. The projectiles seemed to punch completely through our ship's armor and shields." "That is impossible," Vexthul said. "Our shields can stop anything." On the main screen, the human vessel was moving now, no longer sitting motionless in space. It seemed to flicker in and out of existence as it maneuvered between the Zeracon ships, and wherever it went, more explosions followed. "Commander," Zektar called out in panic, "we have lost 6 ships now. Whatever weapons the humans are using, our shields cannot stop them." Vexthul watched his fleet being torn apart by a single enemy vessel. This was not how conquests were supposed to go. The Empire always won through superior numbers and firepower. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the tactical display as 3 more Zeracon ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The alien fleet was in chaos, their formations breaking apart as they tried to target a ship that seemed to exist in multiple places at once. "Excellent work, Kate," Jake said to his tactical officer. "How many confirmed kills?" Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan checked her instruments. 6 enemy cruisers destroyed, Captain. The railguns are performing better than expected. Their projectiles are punching straight through the alien shields like they were made of paper. Jake nodded grimly. The demonstration he had requested from the Zeracon fleet had not been about seeing their weapons. It had been about analyzing them. Dr. Amy Foster had used those precious minutes to study the alien plasma technology and find its weaknesses. "Amy, report on the enemy weapons," Jake ordered. Dr. Foster looked up from her science station, her face focused and determined. "Captain, the Zeracon plasma weapons use a specific frequency pattern that our adaptive armor can counter. The more they fire at us, the better our defenses become. But there's more good news. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons, not physical projectiles moving at the speeds our railguns can achieve." Chief Engineer Ben Walsh's voice came over the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, the quantum fold drives are working perfectly. We can maintain this flickering effect for at least another hour before the systems need to cool down. The aliens can't target what they can't properly see." Jake allowed himself a small smile. When Earth Command had given him the Defiant, they had warned him that the ship's experimental systems were largely untested. But every new technology was working exactly as the engineers had hoped. The quantum fold drives let the ship phase partially out of normal space, making it nearly impossible to hit with conventional weapons. The adaptive armor was learning to deflect the alien plasma beams, and the railguns were proving that sometimes the oldest ideas were the best ones. "Danny, any more alien communications?" Jake asked his communications officer. Danny Rodriguez shook his head. "They're screaming at each other in their own language, Captain. The universal translator is picking up words like impossible and retreat quite a bit. I think we've got their attention." On the main screen, Jake could see the massive Zeracon flagship trying to bring its heavy weapons to bear on the Defiant. The alien ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the human vessel, but its size was working against it. The huge ship could not turn quickly enough to track the Defiant's erratic movements. "Kate, what's our status on ammunition?" Jake asked. "We've used about 20% of our railgun projectiles, Captain. At this rate, we can keep fighting for several more hours. But, sir, there are still over 190 enemy ships out there. Even if we destroy 10 or 20 more, we'll eventually be overwhelmed." Jake understood the problem. The Defiant was faster and more maneuverable than anything the aliens had, but there were just too many of them. Every minute of fighting meant more alien reinforcements could arrive. He needed to end this battle quickly and decisively. "Amy, have you identified any critical targets in their fleet?" Jake asked. Dr. Foster manipulated her scanner controls, studying the alien formation. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from their flagship. It appears to be coordinating the movements of the entire fleet. If we could disable or destroy it, their formation would collapse into chaos." "That's a big ship, Amy. Can our weapons punch through its armor?" "The flagship's shields are much stronger than the cruisers we've been fighting, Captain. But I'm detecting fluctuations in their power grid. All this sustained fighting is putting strain on their systems. If we could hit them at exactly the right moment when their shields are cycling, we might be able to get through." Jake studied the tactical display, watching the patterns of the alien fleet. The smaller ships were trying to surround the Defiant while the flagship stayed in the center, protected by layers of escorts. Getting close enough for a killing shot would mean flying through the heart of the enemy formation. "Ben, how much power can you give me for one final attack run?" Jake asked over the intercom. The chief engineer's voice was calm and professional. "Captain, I can divert all power from life support and non-essential systems to the engines and weapons. It would give us about 5 minutes of maximum performance before we'd have to restore normal power levels. That should be enough. Kate, plot a course directly toward their flagship. We're going to punch through their entire formation and hit that big ship with everything we've got." Sullivan looked up from her station with concern. "Captain, that's going to put us in the crossfire of their entire fleet. Even with the quantum fold drives, we'll be taking fire from dozens of ships at once. I know the risks, Kate. But if we don't stop their flagship now, they'll eventually wear us down through sheer numbers. This is our best chance. Jake turned to address his entire bridge crew. Around him, men and women who had signed up to explore the galaxy were now fighting for humanity's survival. They were afraid, he could see it in their faces, but they were also determined. These people would not let Earth down. Listen up, everyone. We're about to attempt something that's either going to be remembered as the most brilliant tactical maneuver in human history or the most spectacular failure. Either way, we're going to make sure the galaxy knows that humans don't give up without a fight. Communications Officer Rodriguez raised his hand slightly. Captain, should I send a message back to Earth Command? Let them know what's happening out here? Jake considered the question. If the Defiant was destroyed, Earth would need to know about the alien threat. But sending a transmission now might give away the location of the human homeworld to the Zeracon Empire. Not yet, Danny. Let's see if we can win this fight first. If we don't make it, the aliens will probably head for Earth anyway to look for more human colonies. Dr. Foster spoke up from her science station. Captain, I'm detecting a power fluctuation in the enemy flagship's shields. It's happening in a regular pattern about every 40 seconds. If we time our attack just right, we can hit them when their defenses are at their weakest. How long do we have? Jake asked. The next fluctuation will occur in 3 minutes and 20 seconds, Captain. Jake nodded and turned to his helmsman. Set course for the enemy flagship, maximum speed. Kate, charge all railguns and prepare to fire on my command. Ben, divert all available power to engines and weapons. The Defiant's engines roared to life with power as the ship accelerated toward the center of the alien formation. On the main screen, Jake could see the Zeracon ships turning to intercept them, their plasma cannons charging and particle beam weapons coming online. Incoming fire, Captain, Sullivan reported. Multiple plasma beams targeting our position. Activate quantum fold drives. Maximum phase variance, Jake ordered. The ship flickered in and out of normal space as dozens of plasma beams passed harmlessly through its position. But Jake could see that the aliens were learning to compensate for the Defiant's unusual movement patterns. Some of their shots were coming closer than before. 2 minutes to target, Sullivan announced. Enemy flagship is increasing power to shields. Jake watched the tactical display as more Zeracon ships moved to block their path. The aliens were creating a wall of firepower between the Defiant and their flagship. Getting through would mean flying into the teeth of their concentrated weapons. Captain, Dr. Foster called out. I'm reading critical power fluctuations throughout the alien fleet. Their sustained fighting is overloading their power grids. If we can destroy their flagship, the cascade failure might disable half their remaining ships. That was exactly what Jake wanted to hear. One decisive blow could turn the tide of the entire battle. 1 minute to target, Sullivan reported. All railguns charged and ready. Jake gripped the arms of his command chair as the Defiant raced toward its destiny. Around him, his crew worked with calm precision, each person doing their part to keep the ship fighting. These were the best people humanity had to offer, and Jake was proud to serve with them. 30 seconds to target, Captain. Enemy flagships. Shields are beginning to fluctuate. Jake stood up from his chair and moved to the center of the bridge. On the main screen, the massive Zeracon flagship filled their view, its weapons ports glowing with deadly energy. This is it, people. Fire all railguns on my mark. The seconds ticked by as the Defiant closed the final distance to its target. Jake watched the tactical display, waiting for the exact moment when the enemy shields would be at their weakest. Now, he shouted. The Defiant's railguns fired in perfect sequence, sending tungsten steel projectiles screaming through space, at nearly the speed of light. The projectiles struck the Zeracon flagship just as its shields flickered and failed. The tungsten steel projectiles from the Defiant's railguns struck the Zeracon flagship with devastating force. Each projectile, moving at nearly the speed of light, punched through the massive ship's hull like bullets through paper. The first impact sent shockwaves through the entire vessel, while the second and third projectiles found the ship's main power core. Fleet Commander Vex Thule was thrown from his command chair as his flagship shook violently. Emergency lights flashed red across the bridge while alarms screamed warnings in the Zeracon language. Around him, His crew struggled to understand what had just happened. "Damage report!" Vexthul shouted, his scales flashing bright red with panic. Sub-Commander Talvex worked frantically at his station, trying to assess the destruction. "Commander, we have hull breaches on 17 decks. The main power core is showing critical instability. We're losing life support on the lower levels." Vexthul stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His mighty flagship, the pride of the Zerikon fleet, was dying. The human vessel had somehow punched holes completely through armor that was supposed to be impenetrable. The projectiles had moved so fast that their sensors had barely detected them. "How is this possible?" Vexthul whispered. "No weapon should be able to penetrate our shields and armor." Intelligence Officer Krytos looked up from his damaged console. "Commander, the human projectiles were not energy-based weapons. They were physical objects moving at incredible speed. Our shields are designed to deflect plasma and particle beams, not solid projectiles." Before Vexthul could respond, another series of explosions rocked the flagship. The power core was going critical, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. "All hands, abandon ship," Vexthul ordered. "Emergency evacuation protocols immediately." But it was too late. The Dominion's wrath exploded in a brilliant flash of light that could be seen across the entire star system. The massive flagship, symbol of Zerikan power for over 2 centuries, was gone in seconds. Aboard the Defiant, Captain Jake Morrison watched the destruction of the enemy flagship with grim satisfaction. The explosion had been larger than expected, sending debris flying in all directions and damaging several nearby Zerikon ships. "Direct hit, Captain," Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan reported. "The enemy flagship has been completely destroyed." Dr. Amy Foster was studying her scanner readings with excitement. "Captain, you need to see this. The destruction of their flagship is causing a cascade failure throughout their fleet. Their power grids were all linked together and losing the CIDC. Central ship is overloading the others." On the main screen, Jake could see the effects of the flagship's destruction spreading through the Zerikon fleet. Ships that had been functioning perfectly moments before were now showing signs of power failures. Some were losing their shields entirely, while others had their weapons systems shutting down. "How many ships are affected?" Jake asked. "At least 60% of their remaining fleet, Captain," Dr. Foster replied. "Their technology is more interconnected than we realized. Destroying their command ship was like cutting the head off a snake." Chief Engineer Ben Walsh's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, our quantum fold drives are starting to overheat. We can maintain the phase shifting for maybe another 10 minutes before we risk permanent damage to the system." Jake nodded. 10 minutes would have to be enough. The Zerikan fleet was in chaos, but they still had over 100 functional ships. If the aliens could reorganize themselves, they might still pose a threat. "Kate, target the disabled ships first. Let's finish off anything that can't defend itself properly." The Defiant moved through the alien formation like a ghost, appearing and disappearing as the quantum fold drives phased it in and out of normal space. Each time the ship materialized, its railguns fired, sending more projectiles into the hulls of crippled Zerikon vessels. Communications Officer Danny Rodriguez was monitoring the alien transmissions. "Captain, the Zerikon ships are trying to regroup, but they're having trouble coordinating without their flagship. Most of them are operating independently now." "That works in our favor," Jake replied. "A disorganized enemy is a defeated enemy." But, even as Jake spoke, he knew the battle was far from over. The Defiant had destroyed nearly 50 Zerikon ships, but there were still more than enough aliens left to overwhelm his single vessel. The experimental systems that had given them such an advantage were beginning to show signs of strain. "Captain," Sullivan called out, "I'm detecting a group of about 30 enemy ships forming up for a coordinated attack. They're staying close, together, trying to create overlapping fields of fire." Jake studied the tactical display. The remaining Zerikon commanders were learning from their mistakes. Instead of spreading their ships out where the Defiant could pick them off one by one, they were clustering together for mutual protection. "Ben, how much longer can we maintain quantum fold operations?" Jake asked. "Maybe 5 more minutes, Captain. After that, we'll be fighting conventionally, and that's not a fight we can win against these numbers." Jake made a quick decision. Kate, plot a course through the center of that enemy formation. We're going to hit them hard and fast before they can react. Captain, that's going to put us in range of all 30 ships at once, Sullivan warned. Even with the quantum fold drives, we can't dodge that much firepower. I know the risks, but if we don't break up their formation now, they'll eventually corner us. Set course maximum speed. The Defiant accelerated toward the clustered Zeracon ships, its hull flickering in and out of existence as the quantum fold drives worked at maximum capacity. The alien ships opened fire as soon as the human vessel came within range, filling space with plasma beams and particle weapons. For a few terrifying seconds, Jake thought they had made a mistake. The sheer volume of enemy fire was overwhelming, and some of the plasma beams were coming dangerously close to hitting the Defiant, despite the phase shifting. But then the ship's adaptive armor began to work its magic, learning from each near miss and adjusting its defenses accordingly. Armor is holding, Captain, Dr. Foster reported. The adaptive systems are compensating for the increased firepower. Jake felt a surge of pride in his ship and crew. Every experimental system was working perfectly, pushed beyond its design limits but still functioning. The Defiant was proving that human engineering could match anything the galaxy had to offer. Fire all weapons, Jake ordered. The Defiant's railguns unleashed a devastating barrage into the heart of the Zeracon formation. The tungsten steel projectiles tore through the clustered ships like a scythe through wheat. Within seconds, 12 more alien vessels were either destroyed or crippled beyond repair, but the attack run had cost them dearly. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as Chief Engineer Walsh's voice came over the intercom with bad news. Captain, the quantum fold drives are redlining. I have to shut them down now or risk a complete system failure. Do it, Ben. We'll have to fight the rest of this conventionally. As the quantum fold drives powered down, the Defiant became fully visible to the Zeracon sensors for the first time since the battle began. The remaining alien ships, about 70 vessels, immediately began converging on the human ship's position. They're surrounding us, Captain, Sullivan reported. All remaining enemy ships are moving to attack formation. Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They had accomplished something incredible, destroying over half of the Zeracan fleet with a single ship. But now they faced the final test. Could they survive long enough to claim victory? All hands, this is the captain, Jake announced over the ship's intercom. We've come this far together and we're not giving up now. The aliens think they have us cornered, but they're about to learn that humans fight hardest when the odds are against us. On the main screen, the surviving Zeracon ships closed in like wolves circling their prey. Their plasma cannons were charging, and this time the Defiant would not be able to simply phase out of existence to avoid them. Incoming plasma torpedoes, Captain, Sullivan announced. Multiple contacts, too many to count. Jake gripped his command chair and prepared for the final phase of the battle. The Defiant had proven that human technology could stand against the Zeracon Empire. Now it was time to prove that human courage could finish what human ingenuity had started. All weapons fire at will, Jake commanded. Show them what humans are made of. The plasma torpedoes from 70 Zeracon ships lit up space like deadly fireworks as they raced toward the Defiant. Without the quantum fold drives to phase the ship out of existence, Captain Jake Morrison knew this would be the real test of human engineering and determination. All power to shields and point defense systems, Jake ordered. Ben, I need everything you can give me. Chief Engineer Ben Walsh's voice came back immediately over the intercom. Captain, I'm routing power from life support, artificial gravity, even the coffee makers. You'll have maximum shield strength for about 3 minutes before we start losing essential systems. The first wave of plasma torpedoes struck the Defiant's shields in a brilliant display of energy. The ship shook violently, throwing several crew members from their stations. But the shields held, and Dr. Amy Foster's adaptive armor systems began analyzing the alien weapon frequencies. Shields at 80%, Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan reported. But Captain, there are more torpedoes incoming. A lot more. On the main screen, Jake could see the Zeracon ships launching wave after wave of plasma weapons. The aliens had learned that concentrated firepower was their best chance against the mysterious human vessel. They were throwing everything they had at the Defiant. Amy, are the adaptive systems working? Jake asked. Dr. Foster nodded while working frantically at her console. Yes, Captain. Each hit makes our defenses stronger against their weapons, but we're taking a lot of damage before the systems can adapt fully. The second wave of plasma torpedoes hit even harder than the first. The Defiant's shields flickered and sparked as they absorbed the massive energy discharge. Warning lights flashed across the bridge, and Jake could hear the stressed groaning of the ship's hull. Shields at 40%, Sullivan announced. We can't take many more hits like that. Jake made a decision that would either save his ship or destroy it completely. Kate, plot a ramming course for the largest group of enemy ships, all power, to engines and forward shields. Sullivan looked up from her station in shock. Captain, ramming 70 alien ships with our single vessel is suicide. Not ramming, Kate. We're going to fly straight through their formation and hit them with everything we have at point-blank range. They won't expect us to charge directly into their guns. Communications Officer Danny Rodriguez spoke up from his station. Captain, I'm picking up transmissions from the Zeracon ships. They're arguing among themselves about who should finish us off. They think we're trapped. Perfect, Jake replied. Let them think that. Ben, can you give me one more burst of speed? From the engines? I can give you 30 seconds of maximum thrust, Captain. After that, we'll be running on emergency power only. Jake turned to address his entire bridge crew. These men and women had followed him into an impossible battle against overwhelming odds. They had seen their ship accomplish things that should have been impossible. Now he was asking them to trust him one more time. Everyone listen carefully. In 30 seconds, we're going to accelerate directly toward the center of the alien formation. When we get close enough, we're going to fire every weapon we have simultaneously. It's going to be loud, it's going to be dangerous, and some of us might not survive. But if we succeed, we'll have saved Earth from invasion and shown the galaxy that humans don't surrender. Dr. Foster looked up from her science station. Captain, I'm reading massive power fluctuations from the remaining Zeracon ships. The destruction of their flagship damaged more systems than we realized. Many of their vessels are operating at reduced efficiency. That was exactly what Jake wanted to hear. The aliens were wounded and disorganized. One final, decisive blow might be enough to break their will to fight. Helmsman, engage maximum thrust. Kate, prepare all railguns for simultaneous firing. Danny, open a channel to the alien fleet. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of one of the Zeracon cruisers. The alien commander's scales were bright red with anger and frustration. Behind him, Jake could see smoke and damaged equipment. Human vessel, you have fought well, but your destruction is inevitable. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick. Jake smiled grimly at the alien commander. I appreciate the offer, but humans have a saying. We'd rather die on our feet than live on our knees. The alien's scales shifted to deep purple with confusion. Your species chooses death over servitude? That is illogical. Maybe to you, Jake replied. But that's what makes us human. Jake closed the communication channel and turned to his crew. This is it, people. All weapons. Fire everything we have. The Defiant's engines roared to life as the ship accelerated toward the center of the Zeracon formation. The alien ships, surprised by the sudden charge, scrambled to adjust their weapons and target the approaching human vessel. As the Defiant closed the distance, Jake could see individual weapon ports on the alien ships. They were so close now that missing would be impossible. But at this range, the Zeracon plasma cannons would also be devastatingly effective. 5 seconds to optimal firing range, Sullivan announced. Jake stood up from his command chair and moved to the center of the bridge. Around him, his crew worked with calm determination, each person focused on their duties despite the danger. They faced. Fire, Jake commanded. Every railgun on the Defiant fired simultaneously, sending dozens of tungsten steel projectiles screaming through space at incredible speed. At point-blank range, the projectiles had no time to spread out or lose velocity. They struck the Zeracon ships like the hammer of an angry god. The results were spectacular. Ship after ship exploded as the railgun projectiles punched through their hulls and found critical systems. The concentrated firepower of the Defiant's entire weapons array, delivered at close range, was more than even the heavily armored Zeracon vessels could withstand. In the space of 10 seconds, 23 more alien ships were destroyed or crippled, beyond repair. The remaining Zeracon vessels, seeing the devastation around them, began to break formation and retreat. "Captain," Rodriguez reported with excitement, "the alien ships are withdrawing. I'm picking up transmissions ordering a general retreat." Jake felt a surge of relief wash over him. They had done it. Against impossible odds, the Defiant had defeated one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. "Damage report," Jake ordered. Sullivan checked her instruments. "Shields are down to 15%. We have hull breaches on 3 decks and most of our experimental systems are offline. But we're alive, Captain." Dr. Foster was studying her long-range sensors. "Captain, the retreating Zeracon ships are sending out emergency transmissions to other parts of their empire. Word of this battle is going to spread quickly." Jake nodded. The victory here would have consequences far beyond this single star system. The Zeracon Empire had ruled through fear and the belief that they were invincible. Today, that belief had been shattered. "Danny, send a message back to Earth Command. Tell them we've encountered a hostile alien empire, but we've proven that human technology can stand against them. Request immediate reinforcements and prepare for possible retaliation." "Already on it, Captain," Rodriguez replied. As the last of the Zeracon ships disappeared into hyperspace, Jake looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They had accomplished something incredible. A single human ship had defeated a fleet of over 200 alien vessels and sent one of the galaxy's most powerful empires into retreat. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The Zeracon would return with larger fleets and better preparations. Humanity would need to be ready for the war that was surely coming. 3 months later, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the newest human warship, the UES Victory. Around him, a fleet of 50 vessels based on the Defiant's design prepared for their first patrol mission. Earth shipyards were working around the clock to build more ships, while human diplomats established contact with other species that had suffered under Zeracon rule. The question, was that really a human warship? Had become famous throughout the galaxy. Some species asked it with fear, others with hope. But everyone knew the answer. Yes, it was a human warship, and humanity was just getting started. The news of the Defiant's victory had spread to every corner of known space. Species that had been conquered by the Zeracon began to rebel, inspired by the example of human courage. Trade routes opened between Earth and dozens of new civilizations. The galaxy had changed forever. As Admiral Morrison looked out at the stars, he thought about the 50,000 colonists who had died aboard the Meridian. Their deaths had not been in vain. They had given humanity the warning it needed to prepare for war, and their sacrifice had led to the liberation of countless other worlds. The Zeracon Empire still existed, but it was no longer the undisputed master of the galaxy. Humanity had shown that even the mightiest empire could be defeated by courage, ingenuity, and the refusal to surrender. In the depths of space, new human colonies were being established under the protection of the growing fleet. The dream of expanding among the stars was alive again, protected by ships that carried the legacy of the Defiant and the memory of Captain Jake Morrison's impossible victory. The galaxy had asked if that was really a human warship. Now it knew the answer, and it would never forget.